Hello, everybody. I'm Craig Kimbrough with Positive Guru. That's positiveguru.com. As always, glad to have you along in this journey into the world of spirituality, metaphysics, and meditation. The past few days, I've been thinking a lot about movies and just how much they can affect us, and even stories. The stories and movies, how much they can affect us, and how we can actually use them in our lives. I was talking to my youngest son about this, and even saying how I use movies to motivate me to when I am up against certain challenges in my life, and to put me in the right frame of mind to do certain things in my life. And I was even explaining to him how working with someone else with movies in the past, how I was dealing with someone that was struggling with some things in their life, and it was one particular thing that I felt the person needed to get over, and I suggested that they actually started watching certain types of movies that dealt with this, and to picture themselves being a certain, or reminding themselves of a certain thing. And one of the things I was asking them to remind themselves of is that the humble man is the strongest man. And he watched these movies, all these different movies that I suggested over and over again. And within a short period of time, he found himself having less arguments with people, and life seemed to be getting much better. And then after a while, when he seemed agitated, I mentioned it to him. I said, "Well, have you still been?" And he even said, he said, "Man," he says, it's so crazy. All I'm doing is watching movies, and my world is changing." I said, "Yeah, but it's the story that you're telling yourself, and it's also what you're focusing on as you're watching. You're telling yourself a certain story, and it's a story that goes along with your lesson." And he was amazed at how it's working. And then later on, I noticed from talking to him that he was struggling in that same area all over again. And I said, "Are you still doing that?" He says, "Oh no, man, I stopped doing that." But I was telling my youngest son, that's how powerful it can be, what we focus on, what we put in our minds, and the stories that we tell ourselves. And that's one of the ways in which I use at times to tell myself certain stories that I don't need to be told. I will watch those kind of movies. Sometimes I just have them playing in the background as I'm doing some dishes or as I'm doing some paperwork or whatever, but I still know that it's seeping in my mind and it's affecting the way in which I approach the world. And of course, it'll be movies that uplift me in a certain way. Just recently, we were watching this movie, my fiance and I, we were watching this movie, and it was a Woody Allen movie. And it was really interesting. In the movie, he was, Woody Allen wasn't even in this movie, but it was a Woody Allen movie. And it was Anthony Hopkins was in the movie, and I'm telling you who's in it because I don't remember the name of the movie, but I remember Anthony Hopkins is in the movie. Just in case you decide to look for it, you Google Anthony Hopkins and Woody Allen, it'll probably pop up. And it was a very interesting movie because there was all these different characters, and they all had different things going on in their lives. There's a husband and wife that divorced, and there was a younger couple that ended up separating and I believe divorcing. And there were just all these various people in the movie. And it sounded like it was Woody Allen's voice narrating, but at one point he was just talking about how difficult life is. And life is difficult. He was talking about how difficult life is, and and he was even saying that how, in his opinion, how it really didn't have a lot of meaning, and it was just this difficult thing going on. But and as you watch the movie, these people, they had their ups, they had their downs, their highs and their lows. But there were two people by the end of the movie that were happy. And he was saying that sometimes you got to, in so many words, he was saying sometimes you have to tell yourself a good story to get through it, you know. And two of the characters were into metaphysics and things like that, into metaphysics and into the astrology, the stars, and all that kind of stuff, and trying to live their life by it and whatnot. And they were into reincarnation and convincing themselves that of who they might have been in the past and so forth. And it was all exciting to them, and they were enjoying it and so forth. Well, you got the name of the movie. You have to just, oh, You and Me, the Tall Dark Stranger. Thank you. But that was the name of the movie. And one lady was a fortune teller. I've seen Woody Allen do another movie where he had a fortune teller in there too. But one lady was a fortune teller, but these two characters, they were just excited about their lives, excited about who they might have been in the past and all these different things. And part of the narrative was from the other characters was that they were kind of just out there. But they were the two people that were happy. They were telling themselves the story that they wanted to believe, and the story that excited them, the story that made them happy. And I've realized in life that a whole lot of our life really depends on the story that we're telling ourselves. We're telling ourselves that life is hard and life is difficult. And sometimes we mentally say these things. Sometimes we say them out loud. And other times when we are watching certain material, reading certain material, listening to certain material, this is the story that we're telling ourselves. We are choosing these topics to listen to. We're choosing these topics to watch. And then we are putting in our head that this is the way the world works. And then we march into the world accordingly. And if you really get into the subconscious mind and metaphysics, you would even say that we are drawing these type of situations to ourselves, whatever type of situation that we lock onto in the story. I was telling my youngest son, I said, sometimes it depends on who the person is, not just the story. I have a good friend of mine that's in the meditation. He says he cannot watch American Gangster because it just reminds him of the treachery, and there's some treachery in that movie, you know, and killings and the this and the that and the corruption. He said he just can't watch it. Well, you have to know yourself and know what story, if you're going to watch one, what it evokes out of you. You have to pay attention to those things. And then I was talking about that last week as far as having dreams from watching certain movies and so forth. And then I can watch American Gangster and I'll get inspired. I'll be looking and I'll be saying, man, you know, Bumpy Johnson, that was Frank Lucas's mentor. And I'll be thinking about my relationship with my teacher, Mr. M. Brister. And I'll be thinking about all these spiritual lessons I see in that particular gangster movie that has some violence in it. I'll be looking at the student-teacher relationship, and I'll be looking at how when he was more humble, how he was able to progress. And then as he became more egotistical and wasn't able to let go of certain things, how certain things happened. And I'll be looking at how when the one guy from Vietnam is telling him, and I recently quoted this to someone who felt like they were giving up on something. And I always remember this particular quote. He says, well, you know, Frank, quitting while you're ahead is not the same thing as quitting. And I remember him saying that it's not in my best interest to tell you this, you know. And I'll think about these things. It was like that's God talking to him. So I'll be thinking about the different times when God is talking to me, saying, hey, Craig, you better not go in that direction. Or, hey, Craig, you better turn around. Or, hey, Craig, yeah, go in that direction. So for me, it's an inspiring movie. So it's not necessarily black and white as to what's positive and what's negative, because there's other movies that have killing in it. I can't watch that. But maybe somebody else is inspiring, you know. Beyonce, she'll be like, that inspires me. I know I can get out of that prison. And I saw the way he did that. And me, I'll be like, I don't want to see somebody in prison. I'll be thinking about being locked up. But this is the difference, you know. Everybody has what inspires them and what they latch on to. And so we have to know what works for us and what doesn't work for us. But if we find it actually evoking something of a negative nature out of us, we've got to be careful, because then that's when it's not good for us. But if it's evoking something positive, then that's a great thing. But I found it fascinating in that movie that they were so happy because they were telling themselves the good story. And I've been implementing that in my life for quite some time, even romanticizing my life and connecting it to certain types of stories. And even with my gutter and window cleaning business, it's a business where people get dirty and so forth and so on. And I've gotten dirty and so forth. But it's a noble business. People love what we do. And most people have not been able to relate to this, but I don't care. I love watching movies about winemakers because when I think of myself as a winemaker, with my gutter window cleaning business and serving all these people. And I remember in the movie A Good Year, he says, you have to understand because he says, he's talking about himself making wine. And then his nephew says, well, you don't make the wine. That guy DeFleur makes the wine. He says, no, and you have to understand, in France, the wine maker is the one who owns the land. And I say, okay, well, the gutter cleaner, the window cleaner is the one who owns the business. So sometimes I'll be out there, and sometimes I may not be out there. And then there's the finished product that everybody loves, and the people are happy to talk. They talk about, man, my windows look so great, and so forth and so on. I say, this is noble. So for me, it inspires me to have this blue collar business and whatnot. And over the weekend, saw another movie, saw the Avatar movie again, the second one. And I have to say, it's a must see. And it's funny because I didn't know if I was going to thoroughly enjoy another 3 hours of that movie, but I actually liked it even better the second time around. There were so many uplifting, positive, spiritual messages in that movie. And I'm not going to give away what happens in the movie, but I just wanted to at least share some of these incredible things that they talked about in the movie. One of the things that I love that they talk about was how we all come from the energy, and how the energy is all around us, and we come from this energy, and eventually we must all return to this energy. That's the circle of life. That's us. We come from the energy, we return from the energy. We are the energy. And I thought that was a most powerful message. They talked about the sea and the water, and how because at this point they're water people, and they're talking about how they're surrounded by the sea, and how it's everywhere around them, and how they draw from it. And immediately it made me think of the unified field that Einstein spoke of, that field of energy that sits beyond all the chaos of the world. I forget what you call it. Not philosophers. What was Einstein? The physicists. There we go. The physicists would be talking about how there's this chaos theory, and how these atoms, you can look under the microscopes, and the atoms are just jumping around chaotically, and they call it chaos theory because they're all just jumping around. It looks like there's no order to it. And Einstein would say, but no, there's a unity behind the field. And he would say that's the unified field, he called it. And even other movies, they refer to the field. And in the movie Bagger Vance, they refer to the field. He's in the field. But there is this energy beyond the chaos. And Einstein would even say that field, that chaos field, that's God. That's the order behind everything. So we think that things are happening in chaos, but really they're happening in order. And we are one with that order. And I love the way they referenced it and depicted it, and remind us that there's a spiritual connection that we have, and it's everywhere. Wherever we go, God is, the energy is, the own vibration is. That's a big part of what the meditation process is a part of, is accessing that energy. One of the posts that are coming out on the Positive Guru Facebook page is sort of referencing how it says something like meditation, because you can't always get your answers from Google, but but it's alluding to that all the answers are within us because we are connected to that energy. And they depict it so well in that movie, in the Avatar movie. They talk about this in the first Avatar movie. They depicted this tree, and they still depict something very similar to it in this movie. This tree, and it's like the tree of life. It's like this big tree, and it's this spiritual tree. And the beings of this particular planet connect with it. And when they connect with this tree, they connect with the spiritual energy. They connect with their essence. And, in the Bible, it talks about the two trees. There's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's the tree that Adam and Eve ate from. That tree or that mindset that there are some good things and there are some bad things. And the tree of separateness, the tree that when you eat from it, all of a sudden you're ashamed and you're hiding from God, as it happened in the story. And then there's the tree of life, the way back into the kingdom. That's what this tree in this movie was, in my opinion, was symbolizing. But it's more than that. It's a connection that we have, and so often forget that we have. And that meditation process is part of it. So say meditation because you can't always get your answers from Google. Well, we meditate to get beyond all the chaos, to move beyond the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, to move into the tree of life, the tree of oneness, away from the tree of many-fold. And as we move into that symbolic tree, or we move into that spirit, move into that essence, or we move into that field, become more at peace, become more connected, become of a higher energy. At one point in the movie, and throughout the movie, they would show that they had tails, and they would connect their tails to this tree. Both movies, they connect their tails to this tree, and then that's when you would get the essence, the energy. That's what happens when we take the time to go within. We're connecting. And we're focusing on the correct centers. We're connecting. One of the people in the movie, or the people of that region, one of them, she was a young child, but she was of a higher vibration. I guess in metaphysical circles, maybe they say, "Oh, she's been here many times," or "She's an older soul," But when she connected, she could get visions. As we become more in tune, this happens. And I just found it just totally beautiful. I found it totally beautiful how connected she was. It made me want to meditate more and connect more. And even as some of the chaos occurred in my world yesterday, not in any kind of real bad way, but just things for me to focus on and try to figure out and try to understand and try to figure out and write down things on pieces of paper. And should I go in this direction? Should we go in this direction? And what should we do over here? What should we do over there? As I meditate in the evening and then go to sleep, I have a dream. And when I come out, I know that the dream is connected to the decision that I have to make. I know it because that's what the main thing on my mind. And I know that the dreams that I have are no coincidence. The dreams that we have is part of our connection to that essence that's all around us. It's when we are quiet enough, and of course we're quiet enough at times when we meditate, but when we're not even meditating and we're quiet enough, where our conscious mind is shut down enough, where we can get information. Sometimes it may only be just a smidgen of information. Like in the movie, the girl, she got a smidgen of information and was wanting to know more. But sometimes we get it in parts. But we keep connecting, we get more and more information. And with my dream, I got it in a part. And then I'll say, man, I know it's connected to what I've been thinking about. I know how this thing works. And then as I'm leaving out of the bathroom, I find myself saying something to myself, and all of a sudden the inner sound is ringing, and I say, oh man, it's so clear. That's the direction I'm supposed to go in. It's so clear. This is what the dream was about. I can see it so clearly. But this is a connection that we all have. And these dreams we have are not coincidental dreams. And as we take more time to connect, we get more information telling us, this is what I've been trying to tell you, this higher part of ourselves. This is the direction I would like to see you go in. At one point in the movie, this older soul child, that's what I would call her. They don't say that that's what she is, but it's pretty evident. She talking with her father, and she's telling him about the tree that they used to connect with, and she's saying, I miss it. I feel it. I hear it. What does it sound like? It sounds magnificent. But that's how it is when we connect. I remember when I first got on this path, and people would talk about this vibration, this inner sound. And actually, when I first began to embark upon it, before I met my teacher, before I started going to meditation classes, I never had conversations with people about it, but I would read about it. And it was one of those things that was trying to happen to me. You know, there's an order behind everything, and it was part of the unity behind the chaos that I was meant to go in this direction, because there was a book that was right there in my house. As I was in my late teens, early 20s, my mother she didn't remember buying the book. My father didn't remember buying the book, but there it was in our house, and I knew that there's going to come a time in which I need to read this book. I knew the book was deep. And when the time finally came, I began to read it. When I did begin to read it, I noticed that it had circles with Om written, Om, 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 all around, and getting larger and larger circles around it. You know, we see people meditating, sometimes we see people going, Om. That was on the cover of the book. At one point in the book, he's talking about the inner sound. And I was like, wow, there's this inner sound out there, you know. And I guess it was getting closer and closer to the point to where I'm supposed to begin to really get into meditation. I hadn't been meditating yet. Soon after that, I did start meditating. And then I see on the back of the De La Soul cover, they say, the inner sound, y'all. And they were referred to Prince Charles, I think his name, Prince Paul. Yeah, Prince Charles. Prince Paul. Thank you. Everybody's helped me out today. They refer to Prince Paul as like their mentor, their guru type or whatnot. And I was like, man, these dudes are into meditation. And I would just see more and more of it depicted around me and whatnot. But in the movie, she was saying that this sound, it sounds magnificent. And I remember the first time I heard the inner sound, it just blew my mind. Like it's everywhere. Like they said, the sea is all around us. This field is all around us. We may not be aware of it, but it's what holds everything together. And the first time I heard it, I just couldn't believe it. I went walking all around the house trying to see, is it my imagination? Is it coming from the TV set? No. Is it coming from over here? No. And after a while, I realized that it's everywhere you go. I said, wow, even though I thought I knew it was real, I was like, it's real. This is so deep. And it is. That's the reason why we see so many people depict that sound when they're doing mantras and meditation and so forth. In the movie, one of the things that I just loved so much was the love and the things that people would do for love, the sacrifices they would make, the chances they would take, because someone that they love was going through something. That always catches me off guard in movies, and many times I have to try to hide that it just like breaks me up, where I just find myself wanting to cry, because it's so beautiful when you see it happening and someone has to turn around and go back to save someone because they just can't go forward without them, because they love that person. You saw a lot of that depicted throughout the movie, and it just made it a beautiful thing. I love the fact that being a father, the father was talking about what it means to be a father, and he was talking about how a father protects his family and a father sacrifices for a family, just the things that the father does for their kids. That's the same thing for mothers too, and aunts and uncles. It's the same thing, but it was just it was very powerful while it was being depicted. At one point, they were talking about how certain beings were more evolved, and they're talking about, and they say, how do you know they're more evolved? They said, well, they're neurological pathways. You can see that they have more of them, and so forth and so on. And he said, not just that, it's their philosophy. Their philosophy of life, these creatures, the way that they live, the way that they communicate, it makes them higher beings. And I often talk with my youngest about this, that we so often get caught up on who has what and who's accomplished this and who's accomplished that, but really, what matters is the type of person that we are. Our philosophy of life, how caring we are, how loving we are, our way of being, and there are some of us that are more highly evolved than others, and don't sell yourself short when you have those things. Nurture that and be proud of that. That's more important than how much money somebody's making, or how well they did in a sport, or how many people they know. Is who we are as the essence, and other people can feel that. That's the things. That's what counts in this, and that's what we have come here for. We've come to evolve, to move more into the energy, to evoke and to express more of the higher energy everywhere we go. And I just thought it was beautiful how they brought out how certain beings were of this higher energy because of their expression. Now, they were not necessarily as technologically advanced as those who were lower than them, but they had more love. They communicated in higher ways, because they were not. Their concern was not how to gain more. Their concern was not how to crush more, but just how to be, how to share, how to love, and then yet even those beings may sometimes be pulled into having to protect. And I've seen it depicted many times with different things that I've been exposed to with my teacher or with other teachers like Joseph Campbell or so forth, where you even have spiritual warriors who were still of love and still, as Lao Tzu say, when war is conducted, it's conducted like a funeral. Like you feel for the other side, and you know that they are human beings also, and maybe you got dragged into this, but you're going to be as humane as possible throughout the process. But sometimes you may have to stand up for the higher good, as in the Bhagavad Gita with Arjuna, who at first thought it was best not to fight, even though he had to be shown by Krishna, the way the God came to him, that in this particular situation, you have to stand up for the kingdom, for the others, and for yourself even. But it was just so much brought out in this movie. I'm sure I'm going to watch it again. And I was telling my youngest son, we were talking the other day, that we are going to go off of a movie list and maybe even book list and pick those things that inspire us and that depict certain ways of being that we agree upon and would like to move into. And watch them, even if it's just playing in the background as we do other things, because these things seep into our subconscious, and it's all a part of the story that we're telling ourselves. And that's what he and I were focusing on, but we also have to focus on what we talk about, what we read, what we listen to, who we talk to. This is also a part of our meditations. It's a part of our walking meditation. And then by all means, we have to take time to sit in the lotus position and meditate. And when I say in the lotus position, I don't mean that we have to, if you look up lotus position, your legs don't have to be super crossed or anything, but just to take the time to sit down and clear our minds and connect so we can move into these higher possibilities. We can have the higher visions and truly be at peace and enjoy and express the love. I'm Craig Kimbrough, Positive Guru. That's positiveguru.com. As always, glad to have you along. Until next week, peace and blessings to you all.